What really happened at Jungkook's house until his own mother spoke up about Jimin? Is there really something that has been covered up all this time? Check out the full narrative and give your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep abreast of the latest developments that make armies around the world speechless. Why did a mother who always kept her son's privacy suddenly decide to speak out to the public? What prompted him to open his voice now? And why was Jimin's name mentioned in a confession that instantly made the army universe rowdy in just a matter of hours? All these questions came to the fore after an exclusive video cut from a closed-door interview suddenly leaked to the public. In the video, the figure of a middle-aged woman sitting quietly in the living room, familiar to many BTS fans, is clearly visible. It was Jungkook's home, and that woman was none other than his own mother. The interview was not originally intended for the public, but an unnamed person leaked the footage to the internet, sparking a storm of speculation, emotional reactions, and endless debate on various social platforms. The first phrase that the mother utters in the video seems to be the key to everything asterisk. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I think it's time people knew what really happened that night. Asterisk, it didn't take long before the video went viral and became a trending topic in Korea, Japan, and even European countries. Fans, both among the army and the general public, began to piece together pieces of information and assemble them into a huge puzzle that shook the foundations of the public narrative so far about the relationship between Jungkook and Jimin. However, the part that gives the most goosebumps is not just the mother's confession about what happened that night, but how she told it. With a quivering voice and eyes that couldn't hide the trauma he'd been trying to hide for years, he repeated a phrase that lingered in the minds of everyone who watched asterisk. Jimin entered without knocking. And what he did after that, I will never forget. Asterisk, the sentence immediately gave rise to dozens of theories that spread wildly. Some fans suspect it is related to personal issues. Others believe there is a deeper emotional conflict between them. Others attribute this to a period in which Jungkook briefly withdrew from various group activities and appeared more reserved in some content. Many may not know that this incident took place in 2021, long before the public realized there was a distance beginning to form between the two. Jungkook's mother, in the interview, mentioned very carefully that the events of that night changed the way her son looked at the people around him. He did not mention directly that Jimin did anything wrong morally or legally, but the narrative he builds, with every little detail and the way he describes Jungkook's expression after the incident, creates a tension that infiltrates slowly into the hearts of the audience. Asterisk, I remember Jungkook walked into my room that night. He's not talking, but her tears, she cried in silence. It was more painful than hearing him cry. Asterisk, what about Jimin? Why didn't he give a direct clarification when the video began to spread widely? That's what adds so much mystery to this story. Jimin, who had been known as a warm, loving, and caring figure towards Jungkook, suddenly chose to be completely silent. Even his agency did not give an official statement, as if avoiding a fire that began to burn in the middle of a dry field. But that doesn't mean there isn't a reaction. In one of the live broadcasts a few days after the video was leaked, Jimin looked very agitated. He sat still longer than usual, his eyes were red, and several times he could be heard taking deep breaths. One of the sentences he said spontaneously made the fans immediately connect him with Jungkook's mother's confession. Asterisk, sometimes we do things because we think they're right, without realizing we might be hurting the people we care about most. Asterisk, is that a form of confession? Is that an implicit apology? No one can be sure. But one thing is certain. Jimin and Jungkook's relationship changed since then. Long-time staffers who had worked with BTS on various projects began to appear one by one with surprising recognition. One of them was a senior choreographer who did not want to be named. In an anonymous interview, he said that he briefly saw the cold interaction between Jimin and Jungkook a few days after the incident. Asterisk, they sit in the rehearsal studio. Jimin tried to speak, but Jungkook just stared at the floor. Usually they joke with each other, but that day, it was like there was a big wall between them. Asterisk, what really happened that night? Why did Jimin feel the need to break into Jungkook's house without notice? And what made Jungkook's mother, who had been keeping family secrets, finally decide to talk? All these questions became even more stressful when some army began to dig deeper and found that before the incident, Jimin had visited a family therapist. In a public record accidentally revealed through fansite content, Jimin's suspicious schedule is seen on a date adjacent to the night of the incident at Jungkook's house. Is he struggling with personal problems? Or is preparing for an emotional confrontation with Jungkook? Surprisingly, in the final part of the interview, Jungkook's mother said, while looking directly into the camera asterisk, "I don't hate Jimin. I will never forget what he did in that house. I just wish he knew that that night left a mark that would never heal." Asterisk, the words were like a sledgehammer that hit the hearts of all the spectators. Thousands of comments popped up. Most of the army is in a dilemma. They love Jimin, but they also believe in the words of Jungkook's mother, who looks so honest and full of hurt. Will this change the dynamics of BTS forever? Is this the beginning of the split that so many people have been afraid of? The situation became even more heated when a well-known journalist in the Korean entertainment industry published a tweet claiming that HYB had actually known of this incident from the beginning, but chose not to intervene for fear of tarnishing the group's image. The tweet was soon deleted, but screenshots of it have already spread around the world. Not only did this shake up the relationship between the members, but it also opened up a wide discussion about privacy boundaries, emotional distress between group members, and how the agency handles internal conflicts. Many observers of Korean pop culture began to compare this case with a similar situation in other idol groups that eventually broke up due to unresolved conflicts. Is this the same fate that awaits BTS? Until now, there has been no official clarification from Jungkook or Jimin. But fans kept looking forward, hoping there would be an open conversation, or at least a moment of honesty that could cure the collective curiosity and hurt that ARMY is now feeling around the world. Because in the end, the truth is not just about who is wrong or right, but about who dares to be honest first, before it's too late. And that night, at Jungkook's house, something had changed. And as if all that wasn't surprising enough, the following night a new video allegedly secretly recorded by one of the household staff who once worked for Jungkook's family surfaced. The video shows the atmosphere of the living room in low light conditions, illuminated only by dim corner lights. The sound of footsteps sounded fast. The doors open. The figure of a light-haired man entered without taking off his shoes. A faint camera captured his face. No doubt about it, Jimin. He looks fro. Sometimes I look at the second floor. Then there was the sound of the room door opening and closing quickly, as if to make sure no one noticed. The cut of the video was only 27 seconds long, but it was enough to ignite discussion throughout the online community. Comments flooded the Twitter, TikTok, and Weverse platforms. Many asked, if this is not a serious matter, why did Jimin enter Jungkook's house at night, without permission, and with an expression like he was holding something? And to make it all the more horrifying, a comment surfaced from an anonymous account claiming to be HYB's former personal security staff. He wrote one short sentence that immediately caused a stir. I was told to delete the CCTV footage that night. But I remember clearly, the two of them did not speak for more than an hour. There was only the sound of broken glass. Does this mean that there was a physical quarrel? Was the incident that night deeper and more painful than the public knew? This shocking confession ignites a new theory, that the relationship between Jungkook and Jimin was not only strained by emotional issues, but that there were real, traumatic, and painful events that were hidden from the public for years. Speculation was rife, with some even beginning to attribute it to Jungkook's change of attitude in the days after the incident, his darker appearance, more reserved expression, and his absence from some public events being abruptly canceled for no apparent reason. Soon, a famous Korean influencer who is known for getting leaks from industry circles appeared. In his live broadcast, he claimed that there was an internal Hive document that recorded the incident between Jimin and Jungkook as a conflict of a personal nature but professional impact on the group's working conditions. This phrase itself became a global discussion. The word professional impact was interpreted by many as a form of justification that HYB had been aware of this situation, but chose to bury it so that BTS's image would not be disturbed. But HYB's silent decision backfired. The more they were silent, the more parties appeared carrying pieces of stories from the past. A former BTS manager even leaked that during the 2021 to 2022 period, Jimin and Jungkook schedules were often arranged separately, even when they performed together at major events. He mentioned that it was not a request from the agency, but rather a personal request from one of the members. Meanwhile, Korean media began to sniff out internal pressure on Jungkook's family so that the mother would not give additional comments. Some sources say that HYB's staff visited Jeon's family home in Busan a few days after the first video went viral, and the conversation was tense. But again, there is no official confirmation. Only rumors continue to accumulate. In the midst of all this chaos, fans instead began to conduct their own investigations. A fan site known for accurately tracking artists' schedules compiled a complete chronology of the last interactions between Jungkook and Jimin in the group's activities. In the documentation, there is a striking pattern. They almost never sit side by side again in meetings or training sessions, even when all the members are together. Furthermore, fans who followed Jimin's live broadcast some time ago again highlighted one unusual moment. When a fan posted a comment, "We missed Jungkook's interaction," Jimin's expression immediately changed drastically. He paused for a few seconds, then quietly replied, "Not all memories are worth repeating." This sentence, for many people, is a painful form of recognition that something is broken and irreparable. And if you think that's controversial enough, there's still one more thing that brings this situation to a boiling point. In a video posted by a former HYB employee to an overseas platform, it appears that shortly before their international promotion contract was signed, Jungkook had made a written request not to be placed in a duet project or any personal interaction with Jimin. This caused turmoil within the agency as it could have affected the group's dynamics, but the document, with Jungkook's official stamp and signature, could not be disputed. If this is true, it means that the wounds left that night are not just a temporary conflict. It's a deep crack that has affected BTS's global promotion strategy and perhaps the reason for the long absence of genuine interaction between the two. Now, the spotlight is not only on Jimin, but also on the way HYB handles this whole dynamic. Many people began to question whether they really care about the mental health and personal relationships of members, or just focus on maintaining an ideal image in the eyes of the public. Fans demand transparency. They want to know the truth. And for the first time, the ARMY community was divided. Some still defend Jimin, assuming that whatever happens, all humans can be wrong. But others felt that if it was true that the night was as bad as Jungkook's mother described it, then it was no small matter. It's a matter of trust, trauma, and emotional betrayal that can't be solved with just a smile on camera. What really happened in that house that night? Why does only Jungkook's mother dare to speak? And if all the truth is really revealed, will BTS still remain the same as the world has known? Those questions don't have answers yet. But one thing many now believe, that night at Jungkook's house wasn't just an incident. That night was a turning point. And that turning point, now, haunts the entire K-pop world. An even darker truth begins to surface, as an anonymous source claiming to be the personal cleaning staff at the Jeon family's home gives a similarly shocking testimony. He wrote a lengthy confession in a closed discussion forum accessible only to entertainment journalists and industry insiders. The confession was later leaked and went viral in just a few hours. In his confession, he mentioned that the night when Jimin came to Jungkook's house, the atmosphere in the house was very different from usual. According to him, there was no sound of laughter, no familiar chatter as he used to hear from the upper room. In fact, he said, he saw Jungkook sitting alone in the kitchen with red eyes and a glass of water that was not touched at all. A few minutes later, Jimin came in and spoke very quietly, but his voice rose suddenly. Before long, there was a loud noise, like something being thrown. But what gave the most goosebumps was the last statement from the staff. After that incident, Jungkook did not set foot in the living room again for almost a week. He was just in his room. And every night I hear a voice I've never heard before, the sound of men's cries trying to hide. This testimony ignited wider speculation. Some even began to question whether the incident that night was really just about an ordinary quarrel between two best friends. Increasingly, public talk leads to allegations that the events left Jungkook with deep psychic wounds. A number of fans began unpacking Jungkook's solo songs after the incident and found lyrics that now seem to imply disappointment, betrayal, And the feeling of being abandoned by someone very close. One of the most cited lyrics is a snippet from the song Still With You, released shortly after that year. I want to hold your hand and go to the other side of the world. I want to sing under the stars, but now I sing alone. The word alone now sounds not just as a metaphor, but as a barely audible scream of loneliness amid the blinding glare of the stage. But what was most surprising was the silent reaction on Jimin's part. No apologies. There is no clarification, no rejection, just silence. A silence that only reinforces the impression that something is being hidden. Fans are getting angry. They demand honesty. They want to know if all the sweet interactions shown so far are just part of the charade to maintain the image. And when they don't get an answer, they start inventing their own answers. In one of the Japanese variety shows re-aired by a local TV station, one suspicious moment was discovered that went unnoticed by the public for years. In the episode, Jimin and Jungkook sit next to each other, but Jimin is seen trying to spontaneously touch Jungkook's arm. To his surprise, Jungkook subtly brushed off the hand and fake smiled at the camera. At that time, no one took it seriously, but now it looks completely different. He became a symbol of fragile relations, full of falsehood, and shrouded in public pressure. And as the online community began to heat up, came the most chilling theory so far, that the incident at Jungkook's home was not just an emotional altercation, but a major conflict that had been muted over the years by pressure, censorship, and narrative manipulation on the part of the agency. Some call it a non-disclosure agreement that legally binds all parties not to talk about the incident to the public. However, like all lies that are silenced for too long, cracks eventually appear. And now, its fragments hurt everyone who once believed that the relationship between BTS members is pure, honest, and unshakable. One of HYB's former music producers, who was not named for security reasons, even revealed in a private podcast that during the production period of the collaborative song, there was tremendous tension between the group's two lead vocalists. We had to record their parts separately. They didn't talk to each other for days. And when we tried to break the ice, one of them, I won't name anyone, said, "There are things that can't be forgiven even with music." That sentence, if rightly said, is not only a reflection of a personal wound, but also a very serious accusation. And as if the universe was talking, suddenly a famous fan site account uploaded a photo that had never been released before. The photo was taken backstage during BTS' performance at the year-end awards show, just a week after the alleged incident. In the photo, Jungkook is seen standing away from the crowd, staring blankly into a mirror while clutching what appears to be a small pendant in his hand. Jimin was at the other end of the room, laughing with the other members. No eye contact, no interaction, no sign of friendship. Fans who saw the photo were gutted. "We were deceived," wrote one of the most liked comments. "All this time we have believed in the story of a friendship that may have died many years ago. And they continue to sell it as if everything is fine."